Good morning. And thank you so much to our General President. Thank you, Harold, for the kind introduction and for all that you have done for this country, especially the men and women of the City of Angels. You know, Harold Schaperger is a great American. He is a person who, in a time of declining union membership, is seeing a resurgent union right here. At a time of increased cynicism in our country, he's breathing some hope back into our democracy. And this union, in a time of questions and weakness about our country, reminds us of our strength, of our generosity, and who we are as a nation. You know, we live in cynical times, and I think a lot of the trust in leaders, the trust in institutions, in Wall Street, it's at an all-time low. But I come here today from the California Republic, the western flank of this country, to remind us that it's time to stop wagging the finger of blame against working people and to instead find the handshake of thanks, to get rid of empty promises from politicians that go unfulfilled because of rhetoric they have, and to call for and to lift up deep commitments backed up by action and by real votes. You know, nobody doubts your commitment, those of our firefighters, to this nation and to its communities. At a moment when America searches for the truth, look out in this room. Look to your brothers and sisters to the left and right and in front of you and behind you. That's the truth. You're the beating heart of our cities. You protect us. You put your lives on the line for us. And when people find themselves in the greatest peril, you are the ones that they reach out for. Now, before I continue, I want to thank my dear friends, led by Frank Lima, who's the president of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles, Local 112. I'm wearing his Fire Pack pin right now. It represents the leadership of this union and of him and his board. You know, he's running to be the next IAFF vice president for the 10th district, and I may be a little bit biased, but I don't think you can do better than finding an Angelino. And thank you for putting yourself forward, not just to lead our city, but to help lead this union. Frank and I have developed a great friendship over the last few years. I remember vividly when we were together at a big dinner during the AFL-CIO convention in Los Angeles in 2013. I met a lot of firefighters that night, but I want to pause for a second because I want to remember a great man, Mike Mullane, the Boston Fire Department, for his great sense of humor. I remember Mike's wicked, awesome accent. His friends, of course, called him Mickey, and when he opened up his mouth, there is no question that he came from Boston, the home of democracy in this country, the place of the fighting spirit of American Revolution, and I was so sorry to hear of his passing in the new year. And I offer my deepest sympathy, Mr. President, to all your brothers and sisters here and everybody, especially from Boston, who worked with him over the course of 30 years on the IAFF Executive Board. Mickey was the real deal. He was a leader. That was a leader in a profession that's defined by leadership. You see, it's not just the men that are up here. Firefighters learn that leadership comes from every place, the front of the line, the middle of the line, the back of the line. You see a challenge, you run headlong into it without hesitation. You don't duck, you don't look for someone else to step in place and take care of your business, and you stay calm and use your heads no matter what, under incredible stress and pressure. You don't waste a second, you get in there and you solve a problem. That is true leadership. And a lot of people in the halls of government could stand to learn a lesson or two from you. You fighting for our communities, you fighting for our families, you fighting for our country, and you fighting for each other. And I will always stand up for that kind of a fight. And I will always stand alongside the Los Angeles Fire Department because I know one thing for sure. In my city, like all of the communities that you serve, without our firefighters, without our paramedics, our dispatchers, our inspectors, our pilots, my city would be lost. So that's why when I became mayor in 2013, I didn't waste time giving LAFD the respect and the resources it deserves. For too long, LA was not doing right by its firefighters. The biggest city in the biggest state of this nation was failing. Maybe our city's story will be familiar to you. Maybe some piece of it happened in your community. Here's how it went. When the recession hit and Los Angeles was hurting badly, we stopped hiring firefighters. In 2009, we took resources off the streets, let our technology become outdated, and stopped replacing old equipment. What do you think happened to response times? What do you think happened to service? But you can't very well and in good faith criticize and make demands at the same time you're making it hard for firefighters to do their job, right? So, over a number of years, we weren't just not investing in the LAFD. We started making sure, even when the recession was ended, we saw leadership that built the police department but didn't add a cent back to the fire department. Well, things changed when I became mayor. These days in Los Angeles, our firefighters don't take a backseat to anyone. Not to our brothers and sisters in the police department, not to anybody who is a first responder, and it's time for that justice across this nation. In LA, we know what leadership is about. We know it's about open lines of communication, getting the right chief in place, mutual trust and respect. And these days, severe understaffing doesn't put our firefighters and the people of Los Angeles at greater risk. I will not allow a firefighter to lose his or her life because we made the wrong decisions. And it wasn't just talk about respect for firefighters, it was action. We ended a 5-year freeze. We're restoring the resources we lost during the economic downturn. For instance, we're adding an engine company next month to our busiest fire station, which is in the Skid Row part of downtown Los Angeles. Even if you don't know LA, you've probably heard about Skid Row. LA has one of the greatest concentrations of homeless people in the nation. And our dedicated firefighters are the front line of addressing this crisis. You heard the governor talk about it. We see in all of our communities cheap drugs, opioids, heroin, other things that are causing a spike in crime for the first time in America's cities. And who responds first, even before the police? It's our firefighters. They have more contact with homeless Angelenos than even our police officers. And my goal, and we're working hard on this, is to get every single Angeleno in my city off the streets. But until that happens, it's my responsibility to support the firefighters who work so hard in this challenging neighborhood. You see, talk is easy. It's cheap. But words without action, they don't mean anything. Action is what makes the difference at City Hall. Action is what makes the difference here in Capitol Hill. Action is what makes the difference in each one of our communities. And speaking of this town, there are some folks here who have made a big point about how much they love firefighters. You know the type. Maybe they're sometimes even invited here. And then suddenly they seem to forget that they stood in front of you and told you they'd be with you when you need them most. In the last decade, I've been shocked by some members of Congress, the ones who say they support firefighters and first responders, but they turned around and voted against the James Zadroga 9/11 Act. That's not just hypocritical, that's immoral. Because the James Zadroga 9/11 Act passed after a long, hard fight. It was named after somebody who went into the rubble to find the living and to honor the dead. And when that passed, I cheered from far away. The same way I mourned in LA for all the departments and families in and around New York City that lost their loved ones in 9/11 and in its aftermath. You see, that's a piece that too often gets overlooked, the aftermath of your work. People thank you for your service, happy retirement, and then they kiss off. We know that firefighters get cancer at a much higher rate than the general public and have a 14% greater risk of dying from that disease. I see it firsthand in Los Angeles, and it's heartbreaking. Just a few weeks ago, I met the family of a battalion chief who, after more than 20 years of service, was diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer. He died at home in 2013, unexpectedly, while recuperating from cancer treatment. He was 44 years old. He left behind a wife, 2 children. One of those children, his daughter Mackenzie, was awarded a scholarship by the California Fire Foundation just last month. There is no way to ever make up for that family's devastating loss or to repay them for the sacrifice. But the California Fire Foundation honors his memory by helping his daughter get a good education, to follow her dreams. And I told her that night that she was always going to be a part of our family. You see, we honor our fallen heroes by doing everything possible to ensure that firefighters are in good health and that retired firefighters are in good health too. It's why I stand with you, and I want to lead a movement of mayors across this nation in supporting the Firefighter Cancer Registry Act. I don't care when Washington does an act. We've got mayors of cities that are bigger than the population of entire states. And it is time for us to recognize this scourge and to be there for you and to make sure your families and your health are taken care of. It is time. So I put my signature behind that, but I'm going to get other mayors across this country, because it's we who see that. You see, that act is the only way that scientists can better understand the link between your work and cancer. I'm sick of stories and anecdotes. It's time for the science to prove what we know. And we also need to ensure that once firefighters are ready to leave the fire station for good, they get the pension and retirement benefits they deserve. Enough of blaming firefighters and public employees for the problems of Wall Street. You didn't cause the recession. And moving to things like defined contribution cost us money. It is time for us to make sure you don't have to worry about your financial security. And in LA, we will lead that way. We did it together with our union, and we're going to continue to do it nationwide. My brothers and sisters, you and your families have made so many sacrifices. You should be rewarded for them. And it is a great honor to stand with you on this issue and so many others, because the bravery embodied in your work, whether it's here in Capitol Hill or whether it's out there on the front lines of responding to emergencies when people have nowhere else to turn, or when you head off to work each day knowing that the next call for service and how you answer that call could mean the difference for your family between life and death. I've called 100 firefighters plus that have been injured on the job since I've been mayor. Every single one I hear about, I pick up the phone. And I was sharing with General President, because they're firefighters, whenever the mayor calls, they're like, all right, who's punking me? Is this Tommy? It's not really the mayor, is it? It takes about 5 minutes to convince them that it's not a practical joke. But once they hear and they know, whether it was just a sprained finger or whether they've got second-degree burns, that somebody cares about them, in these times when big talk is too often substituted for action, when people are puffing out their chests in public ways instead of reaching out to help in small, quiet ways that never get noticed, it's time for us to breathe some hope back into this democracy. You are doing that. The work you do shows us what can be accomplished when we put each other first. In a nation that's talking about building up walls and pointing fingers, what can we do to break those down? When we have a heart for service and we put everything we have into that. That is just the example that this world and this nation needs now. And I thank you for sharing that every single day, for inspiring us to be who we say we are as Americans. You know, my daughter is 4 years old. Her name's Maya. And since she's been 2, since she could talk, she's loved her firefighters. In fact, whenever she's in bed with my wife and I and there's a fire engine that goes by, she'd pop up out of her sleep and say, "Daddy, Daddy, it's firefighters. They're going to help people." And every single day when she goes off to preschool, I tell her one thing. I say, "Baby, be kind, be generous, and be strong." I think she loves firefighters because that's who you are. First and foremost, you're kind and you're generous. And this union shows that you and this nation is strong. Let's remember our hearts again, brothers and sisters. Let's push our leaders, people like me, not to just come here and say the words, but take the actions that prove our hearts to be big and kind and strong and generous. And with that, I know America's future isn't cloudy. We can save this nation, and it flows right through this room, through the leadership up here and through the leadership out there. And I'm proud to be alongside you for every step of the way. Thank you so much.